Hello, football fans. This is Anthony coming at you with Two Fat Guys Fantasy Football, doing the next of our series of team breakdowns for the offseason. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Detroit Lions. So as always, we're going to take a look at the roster at the end of the season and then compare it to where they're at currently. So let's jump right into it. So at the end of the season last year, Detroit was a team that performed probably better than a lot of teams and a lot of people expected them to through the course of the year. But they've made a lot of strides forward in the last couple of years. Dan Campbell has kind of changed that culture quite a bit, and they're doing some good things. So, kind of the first thing that jumps out at you when you look at this is kind of the offensive line. They made a point to address that and do some good things. Frank Ragnow is, I think, the kind of the centerpiece. Uh, he is one of the best centers, if not the best center in the NFL. He's just a real quality interior lineman that makes it easier for the guards next to him to succeed. A couple years ago, they drafted Penei Sewell, and I don't think anybody is upset with that pick, at least in the organization. He's playing right tackle, and he is excelling right now. I think eventually he will move over to left tackle, but for now, he's a right tackle, and he's doing really, really well. Taylor Decker, solid veteran, and then Jonah Jackson and Vaitai rounded out. Uh, Tight end group needs a little work. Nobody really jumps out at you, but they fulfilled the role that they needed to for this team, and did just an okay job. Jared Goff at quarterback is Jared Goff at quarterback. He's good, not great. And unfortunately, in the NFL, if you don't have a great quarterback, you're not going to get to where you want to be. At his best, Jared Goff did lead the Rams to the Super Bowl. Um, a lot of that was due to the team around him, though. It wasn't anything that he did. He's not special really in any way. Um, he's just a kind of a good quarterback. A lot of people are speculating that the Detroit Lions might use one of their luxury picks that they have this year at the top of the draft to move up, potentially ahead of the Colts, to draft a quarterback to be Goff's successor. Eventually, his contract does get to be somewhat prohibitive for the type of player that he is. If you look at kind of what's left, 3 years left, and 30 million a year for what Jared Goff brings is pretty significant. Um, I think after this year, though, you can kind of get out of it without any real negative connotations. So even if they move forward with him, though, 30 million for a starting quarterback right now, it's in line. So uh, you could draft a guy, let him sit for a couple years behind Goff, and then take the reins when you don't want to pay Goff the next contract. Uh, One of the greatest people in the NFL, one of my favorite players to listen to in their interviews. Jamal Williams led their running back room last year. He scored about 1 million touchdowns, I think. Made a lot of fantasy owners very, very happy. He's a good back. He was definitely a great compliment to DeAndre Swift. Unfortunately, Swift's career has been somewhat derailed by injuries. Swift has all the talent in the world to be an elite back in this league, but unfortunately, he has trouble staying healthy. So, kind of as long as he's the guy, the Lions are going to have another guy. Jason Kabinda, another great personality, good fullback in the league, just kind of fulfills that role nicely. But wanted to mention him here because he is just one of those good guys of the NFL. In their wide receiver room, they have a lot of unique kind of guys. Amon-Ra St. Brown is, of course, the leader in that room. He has turned into be an outstanding receiver. After just a couple years in the league, he is one of those guys that is very, very dependable. He doesn't have kind of breakaway speed, but he plays faster than he is. He makes guys miss. He absorbs contact. He's great across the middle. Um, not really a burner. He's not really a go route, 9 route kind of guy, but he is one of those guys that anything short and intermediate, he has a chance to make the play something special and get more than what's there. That's kind of what he's excelled at through his career. Uh, the Lions did trade up last year to draft Jamison Williams. Jamison Williams, coming out of Alabama, was, without the injury, going to be the best receiver in the class. And now we'll see. I don't know. I don't know what to expect out of him. When he did finally get healthy, he saw the field and caught, I think, one pass for a touchdown. But that's it. He didn't get on the field very much once he finally was healthy. I do expect him to have a role. I expect him to kind of be the deep threat guy for the Lions, but hopefully he's able to really evolve into a pure number one receiver, which will lead Amon-Ra to actually slide into the number two role, which would be absolutely terrifying for opposing defenses. Last year, the Lions added DJ Chark on the outside, who had one of his best seasons. DJ Chark is one of those athletic specimens, 6'4", 200 pounds, 4.4 speed. He's a big, big, fast guy. Unfortunately, he also has had trouble staying healthy, but he fulfilled that number two role for the Lions last year very, very well. And if he can stay healthy, he has a chance to do something. The rest of the wide receiver room, Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond is kind of a unique name, more of a return guy than a receiver, but I think he could uh, be a solid receiver as well. And then Quintez Cephas. Quintez Cephas is, I just love saying the name. He's a young guy, still developing, has some unique skills. He's pretty good. Again, good, not great, but he is a guy that can help you out. He can help you win some games. Good depth guy to have at the very least. So that's kind of a quick look at the offense, where they were. On the defensive side of the ball, we have some really fun pieces here. Aiden Hutchinson last year was the number one pick, or I'm sorry, the number two pick, but the number one pick for the Lions, and should have been the first guy off the board. But yeah, it is what it is. Aiden Hutchinson had a very productive rookie season, really started to develop and kind of take off quite a bit. He is going to be a threat in this league for a long time. He's a good edge guy, good run defender. He kind of does a lot of things well. On the opposite side, they have the Okwara brothers, Romeo and Julian Okwara last year. Unfortunately, neither one of them really played all that much. There was a lot of issues there. Michael Brockers was the veteran of the group. Aleem McNeil is a guy that I really like a lot. Young guy, strong guy, big anchor kind of guy. I think he's going to step in and really be a good nose tackle in this league for a long time. In the linebacker group, we have Alex Anzalone, Barnes, uh, Rodriguez. Malcolm Rodriguez is kind of the guy. He's the one that jumps out at you, the hard knocks hero. Really fun guy. He's going to have a really productive career in the league as well. Um, as far as their cornerbacks played very well last year. Jeff Okuda kind of returned to what they expected him to be when he was drafted. Mike Hughes and Amani Oruwariye, all three kind of took significant steps forward last year, and I think helped out quite a bit. You had Tracy Walker and Deshaun Elliott as the leaders of the safety group. Kirby Joseph is another young guy. He was a rookie out of Illinois, and he played really well as well. He's a guy that will step in and moving forward will be a really good free safety in this league. But the Lions last year, like I said, they performed very well, probably better than a lot of teams expected them to. Came on strong. Definitely a lot of fantasy players didn't expect a ton, I think, out of the offense. but they got a lot of production. So let's take a look and see now what has happened to the Lions roster since the preseason, or I'm sorry, since the postseason ended, and as the offseason has continued on. So as we jump right back into it, we'll see that the first thing that we'll notice is that, of course, the quarterback has not changed. Jared Goff is still the quarterback of this team. Amon-Ra still the leader in the clubhouse for the wide receiver room. But the running back room has changed up a little bit. Now they replaced Jamal Williams with David Montgomery. As a Bears fan, I can tell you that the Lions are getting a very good running back in David Montgomery. He does a lot of the things that DeAndre Swift does well. He also does well. It's going to be a good rotation. One thing that Monty has proved is that he is pretty durable, so he'll be able to step in and rotate very well and cover for DeAndre Swift. And I think ideally he will end up being the lead horse in that running back room, which much to the dismay of a lot of the fantasy community. They did go out recently and they brought Marvin Jones Jr. back in. He was on the team a couple years ago, left, and then he is now back. And I think he is an upgrade over DJ Chark for what the Lions want to do. He's going to be a great complement to what Amon-Ra does really well. He's going to fit in very, very nicely, bring a little bit of veteran leadership, and help teach Jameson Williams how to be a pro, and even teach Amon-Ra how to be a pro. So I think both of these guys get better because of the addition of Marvin Jones. Outside of that, we still have the same guys: Josh Reynolds, Quintez Cephas, and Khalif Raymond. We did make a slight change here on the offensive line. And rather than rolling with Vaitai, we have Graham Glasgow now. So Graham Glasgow slides in and is a slight upgrade over Vaitai, but does help that offensive line out even better. So I expect this offense to continue to do some good things this year. One room that could be addressed, and I think will be addressed in the draft due to its depth, is the tight end room. I don't think they see themselves rolling out with Shane Zylstra as their top tight end moving forward. On the defensive side of the ball, again, we've had some changes. Brockers has left, and now we have Aleem McNeil taking over that primary nose tackle role, and I think he will do extremely well. Outside of just Jeff Okudah, the rest of the cornerback room is gone. They did bring in Cam Sutton. Cam Sutton to fulfill part of that role. Cam Sutton was in Pittsburgh, if I'm remembering correctly, last year. So it's Cam Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley to bring in and fulfill those two roles. Is the cornerback room as good as it was last year? Maybe. It remains to be seen. They meshed very well. They kind of worked together last year, and I'll be interested to see if they're able to do that again this year. I think what they lost is slightly ahead of what they gained, but potentially it could be better. We'll have to wait and see. We still have the Okwara brothers over here, so hopefully they can provide some health and quality play. Malcolm Rodriguez still out here. The rest of the linebacker room is essentially the same as well. In the safety room, we did bring in C.J. Gardner-Johnson. CJ is a great addition to this defense. He does a lot of things well. He was a really key player on the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl run last year, and I think he is going to bring a lot of that experience over and help Kirby Joseph with his development, and just strengthen that back end quite a bit. He's a nice chess piece. He is more of I think, kind of an in the box kind of safety than he is a deep safety, but that's perfectly fine. He's good in coverage no matter where you line him up. He can play some slot corner if you need him to. Could play some off-ball linebacker if you need him to. He's just a kind of all-around nice chess piece to have, and I think he makes that defense quite a bit better. I'm excited to see this defense. Not as a Bears fan, but as a football fan, I'm excited to see what this defense can do this year. So overall, they're in a spot where if you had to ask me whether they got better or worse, I will say that they got better so far this offseason, and we still have the draft yet to come. And the Lions do have two first-round picks again this year. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. So I think, like I said, we've got the luxury pick at the top of the draft. A lot of speculation on what they're going to do with that. Um, some people think that they're going to trade up, get the quarterback of the future. I wouldn't hate it if that's what they did for the team. I say it's you're not really mortgaging your future. You do have a surplus of picks thanks to the Matthew Stafford trade. So it's not the worst idea to do that. But as we saw, there are some holes on the defense that you could fill. If they were looking at quarterback, I think the guy that they're looking at is Anthony Richardson, or again, like everybody, Anthony Richardson or C.J. Stroud, whichever falls to number three. Three is the pivot point. Everybody assumes that the Colts are taking a quarterback at four. So if you want to get your guy, you're going to have to move ahead of the Colts. And for that, like I said, from seven to move up a couple spots, or from six to three, not going to be that expensive. So you yeah, you could get that. You could sit at, I mean, you could sit at six. At six, if you assume that quarterbacks go one, two, three, and four, somebody trades up to get that third quarterback, leaving Indianapolis to take the fourth quarterback. Um, I'm not sure that that happens. If somebody moves ahead of the Colts to take the third quarterback, I'm starting to believe that they would take the best player available on their board and then figure the quarterback situation out later, potentially trade for Lamar the next 2 years, first round picks for that to try to make that happen. But if they did sit, I mean, you're still three quarterbacks in the top four picks, and so you're going to see whoever teams believe to be the best defensive player. Will Anderson, Christian Gonzalez. I've heard rumors recently that a lot of teams are removing Jalen Carter from their draft boards. I haven't heard that from any necessarily reliable sources or sources that I deem to be reliable, but we'll find out. I would say it is lying season, so potentially maybe they're just trying to get him to drop so they can get him later in the draft. Something that happens commonly at this time of year. But if you sit at six, you've got the chance to see maybe Will Anderson's there, maybe Christian Gonzalez is there. If you like Witherspoon at corner better, maybe you take Devin Witherspoon at that spot. Um, you have a lot of options. Maybe you look at Tyree Wilson if he's your guy. Whoever your top defensive player is, that's who you take. With the uh, the Okwara brothers not being as reliable, I think potentially that rush end, that 3-4 end. Again, Will Anderson is not a scheme dependent guy. You could line him on up over there and you could be fine. Tyree Wilson's a little bit bigger. He's going to do the job a little bit better. But yeah, so any one of those guys could fill that bill, and I think that's probably where they go. Later in the first round with their second pick, we have a lot of other options. Tight end could be on the board. You could take a guy like Dalton Kincaid. You could take Michael Mayer, um, whoever that is. Uh, Deontay Banks later. If you go address the line early, get Banks later. Um, Cam Smith also would fit that. Or if you go corner early, maybe Miles Murphy is the guy, or Brian Breesy is the guy, or even Osiris Torrance. I don't think that line is a big issue, but you, whoever the best player available is kind of, I think, what they're going to do. So let's take a look at some of these later guys. uh, like Kalijah Cansey, Deontay Banks, Cam Smith, and Miles Murphy. Let's take a look in here, and we'll take a look at the tight ends as well, because I think those are in play as well. So let's look at the tight end first because it's the most fantasy relevant. So Dalton Kincaid, through the pre-draft process, has overtaken Michael Mayer as most pundits' number one tight end. Um, he's a little more athletic, a little more of a pure receiver than Meyer. Michael Mayer for me is still my number one tight end in the class, just because he is a plug and play, every down. He can be in line. You can split him out. You can use him in a variety of ways, and I think he's a more NFL ready from the get go tight end. Like you're not going to have to teach him a bunch. He's going to be kind of ready to go. Luke Musgrave is another guy. He's more of that pure kind of split out receiving threat, and then Zach Kuntz is the most interesting guy to me in this room. Um, wasn't very ultra productive, had some injury concerns, but this guy is testing off the charts. His athletic scores are some of the best we've seen at the position uh, since Kyle Pitts. He's a guy you're going to be able to get a little bit later in the draft, I think, but he's in that still that tier. But I haven't seen a lot of teams discussing him as kind of a top guy. But again, this is lying season, so we'll see. He's an interesting piece and one that I think could be really really uh, productive in the NFL. And then Darnell Washington is another guy that I like a lot, and I think you could get a little bit later than some of the others, but I think you could plug him in and go. A little bit kind of bigger. He's designed more to be kind of that in-line blocking tight end. He does have some receiving skills. He just wasn't asked to receive much at Georgia. Um, does have some issues with his blocking. Sometimes he gets knocked off his spot a little more than you'd like to see for a guy that size that's primarily used as a blocker. But at the same time, you see him kind of dominantly win some blocks as well. So um, I think that's coachable. I think that's fixable. But Darnell Washington is a really unique name as well to watch in the draft. And then the other guy is Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta is a guy that's been kind of rocketing up draft boards recently. Um, comes from Iowa. So Iowa has produced a lot of very productive tight ends in the NFL, and I think Sam Laporta is going to be another guy. He's definitely going to be a day two guy. I think. I don't think he falls into day three, but he's another guy that is similar to Meyer in the fact that you're going to be able to kind of plug him and play him from day one, and just not have to worry about him moving forward. He's just going to be a five, 5, 8, 10 year tight end for you. Uh, Kind of next, let's take a look at some of these middle round corners, these late, well, mid first, early second corners. So Deontay Banks is a guy. He's got kind of that ideal length that you're looking for. He played for Maryland, great speed. Coverage is a little underneath where the top guys are, but that's because he's not one of the top guys. He's going to come in and be very productive. He would be rated for most as quarterback 5, quarterback 6, potentially quarterback 7 in this class. But he's going to come in and he'll be a starter day one for whoever takes him. Cam Smith, again, very similar size, doesn't have quite the speed, but he might actually be slightly better in coverage than Banks. So you kind of trade off some of the athleticism for some of the uh, NFL ready coverage skills. I talked a little bit about Keely Ringo in a previous video. Keely Ringo is the guy for me that I would be targeting. If he had come out last year, he would have been in the argument for to be one of the top cornerbacks taken. He would have been right there with behind Sauce, but right there with Stingley. But unfortunately, this year he didn't have quite the dominating year that we all kind of were hoping for. He struggled in a couple of spots against some top competition, but he did have some dominant games, but not as often as you'd want to see for a guy. He's still very young, still has a lot of room to grow, but he's a guy with really, really good size. I mean, it's 6'2", 200 pounds. He's able to be physical. He's got elite speed. So you're going to get a guy that's going to be maybe a little bit of a project, but everybody thought that about Tariq Woolen last year as well. So he's kind of the closest thing to me to Tariq Woolen in this year's class. Now, I'm never going to say that, every player is different, but if you're looking for that type of player, this is where I would lean. Emmanuel Forbes is another kind of neat guy, good size. You'd like him to probably put on a little more weight, um, but that's something that can come once you get into the strength and conditioning um, programs in the NFL. But he's another guy out of Mississippi State that I think could come in and do good things for you, and you could take him and not have to worry about it. Um, in your DT, kind of Kalijah Cansey is a guy who might be a little undersized as a D tackle. Could probably play him at a 3-4 end if you wanted to. I think he's more suited to be kind of a 4-3 tackle and come in, and he's kind of one of those guys, again, kind of elite athleticism. Um, to draw the Aaron Donald comps is very easy, but probably not fair to him because, again, Aaron Donald is a kind of a unicorn. But I can see a lot of Aaron Donald's game in Cansey's game. So he's a guy that's really intriguing to me. Um, I am never going to get this name right. Atabarowe, I believe is how you say it, out of Northwestern. Really, really interesting piece. He's a three tech kind of all day. I think you could line him up as a 3-4 end, but he's a guy that brings a lot of unique skills, and I think will bring really good production as his career progresses. Mozzie Smith and Siaka Ika and Gervin Dexter. These are three guys that I like a lot. I like Gervin Dexter, I think, more than most, partially because of his youth. He played at Florida, so he had SEC competition, and he had games where he was very dominant, and he had games where he was kind of a complete non-factor. I think once you get him into the right NFL system, he could be a guy that would slide in and do a lot of good things for you. He might get picked on a little bit as a rookie, but he's a guy that I think in his second year could show some real improvement and be a guy that you would be really happy with. On your ends, we talked kind of a little bit about Miles Murphy, Brian Breesy in a previous video. The biggest takeaway for me in these two guys is how much of their production is a result of each other. Um, Brian Breesy had kind of a down year, which allowed Miles Murphy to take the spotlight a little bit. Um, Now that Breezy's got everything in order and everything behind him, I like him slightly better as a prospect than Miles Murphy, but they're very close. Will McDonald is a guy for a lot of teams that is flying up draft boards. He was kind of thought of kind of in a lot of at least a lot of my pre-draft ranking as kind of a third round kind of guy. Now I could easily see him going in the first round. His testing scores have been very, very good. He's a guy that is more of a pure 4-3 end, but um, in the right system, he could come in and thrive. The next one for me is kind of Keon White. Keon White would be an interesting add in the second round or that second pick of the first round if he's your top guy for the Lions. He could slide in, kind of just push the Okwara brothers out of the way and solidify that line. Out of Georgia Tech, he's a really unique player. Um, strong enough to hold the edge, fast enough to give you that situational kind of pass rush ability, and a guy who's going to come in and be a productive NFL player. But that's kind of a nice look at some of their potential top targets. But for me, like I said, the biggest takeaway is that I think the roster has gotten slightly better. Um, I think they're in a position to compete for the NFC North. title, potentially make some noise in the playoffs. But it'll all depend and go from there. But as always, I appreciate every single one of you. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to be coming back at you tomorrow with the next of our team breakdowns. I'm always open to suggestions, but kind of what I'm trying to do is kind of start from the top of the draft, work my way down, and we are going to get through every single team before the NFL draft happens. After the draft has happened and settled and rosters are filling out and taking shape, we'll revisit these kind of as we get in, maybe a little closer to the uh, training camps and get some fantasy outlooks for some of the players on these teams. But any feedback, always encouraged. Please leave a comment and let me know what I could do better. I'm always looking to get better. So thanks so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.